Hello, thanks for coming. I'm Amy Kranick. I'm a Sculpey brand ambassador. Delighted to have you here in our creative classroom with Michaels. I'm in the Sculpey studio and I'm very excited about what we're doing today, and I've got a lot to cover. So let me show you what we're doing. I was challenged by my boss Jen here at Sculpey to see how many earrings I could make with 6 bars of clay. And so I have these egg crates that I've used to sort them all. This is 36 different pairs of earrings that I've made right here. I actually made 42 pairs of earrings with just 6 bars of clay. And I stopped at 42 because I thought that's enough. I actually had more clay left over. So the point of the class is to be able to mass produce a lot of pairs of earrings, but then mix them up and make every single pair just a little bit unique. And this comes in really handy for having these skills when you maybe want to open up an Etsy shop, or you might want to do some craft fairs. So let's go to the overhead camera, and I'll keep talking as we are getting going here and giving you more and more details about the way this worked. These are the Sculpey 6 bars of clay, and these are all Premo. What I used was Raw Sienna, Spanish Olive, Alizarin Crimson. I used Beige, White, and Gray Granite. And so this is what I consider our colorway. And what I did with that was make as many earrings as I possibly could. Now I want to show you just in our spotlight, these are the ones Jen featured on our website. There's post earrings, there's fishhook earrings, and you can just see how all the colors work really well together. And that was just a sampling of how it worked. Now I want to show you what we're actually making with the 6 bars of clay. There is a slab that is partially pebble and partially floral. There's a slab that is geometric terrazzo. Then there are some slabs. There's going to be some slabs that we make with our scraps and make some coordinating marbled clays. We're also going to feature some of these colors turned into gold leaf and also in textures. And I want to show you quickly how I did all of those. So if you can imagine, I don't know if any of you are quilters, but when you go to a quilting shop or a fabric store, you have what's called colorways. And in each colorway, you might have, 6 or more different patterns. And that's basically what we did with our clay as well. This one I call Pebble. And let me just show you how I did that. So this background color, which I like to start with a light background, it is 1/4 bar of white and 3/4 bar of beige. And I think that for these background patterns, just a really light neutral background works really well. Now I'm just pinching off pieces of gray granite and mushing them down as flat as I can by pinching them between my fingers. So what I'm doing here is showing you how I achieved all this just in the little corner there. I also have some beige splotches, and this is the beige used at full strength. It's not been muted with white. And I'm just pinching it off of a little rod and smushing them down with my fingers. Now, when I made this full sheet, between colors, I would actually roll it with an acrylic roller like this one, or you could run it through a pasta machine if you want. And you want to make these pieces that we're putting on super duper flat, so they basically blend in with the background color. So I think that for production work, if you're going to get going with making a lot of different, pieces that you want to sell, a pasta machine is a really good way to maximize your time, help you condition clay, and get yourself going. So I have a pasta machine, and all my background sheets I rolled through on the second thickest setting. Right now I'm making some background designs with a needle tool. And the reason I did that was it gave me a place to aim when I wanted to add my little floral elements. And my floral elements in this case are these little bitty ferny pieces. So next I'm going to section a little rope of the Spanish olive. And I'm just going to hand roll these. I did very little hand rolling because I don't want to take up a lot of time when you're doing pieces for sale and in quantity, you kind of want to maximize your time and maximize your hand movement. So hand rolling pieces is kind of time consuming. And I'm going to show you some ways to avoid that with future elements that we're adding. But for now, I'm just hand rolling these little fern pieces. So just get yourself in a position where you're comfortable and you can just roll out a few of these. And I'm placing these little ferny elements just along those little marks that I made earlier with the needle tool. So I'm just going to put these in place. Now this works well if the clay doesn't stick to your blade, like it's not sticking to my blade right now. Sometimes I'll notice the clay will stick to my blade depending on how the angle that I'm holding the blade. And I found a sure way to not get the clay to stick if I hold my blade at a backward slant to the clay. Let me pull this over so you can see better. If I hold my blade at a backward slant, you can cut a lot of pieces without the clay sticking. And that's just another way to make good use of your hand motion so that you're not duplicating your work. Okay, I've got some little leaf pieces put on, and then you'll also notice that I'm able to slide my clay around because what I'm working on is deli sheets. I have each of my different slabs assembled on a deli sheet. Now this is like the kind of stuff when you buy ham or turkey. This is the kind of paper that comes in the little baggie from the deli. And you can buy these. I've got one right here. You can buy these in big boxes. You can buy like a lifetime supply from a box store. And what that does is it makes it able for me to spin my work around and get it exactly where I want it. So I'm holding this tool at a constant angle, and I'm actually spinning my clay to meet that angle that I need with my tool. And this is a conservation of hand motions, which makes you much more efficient. All right, I added my little ferns there in that corner, and now I just need to add a few more details. And I've got some little Raw Sienna doodads here in the background that I like, and I'm going to add a few of those. Now, when you're making these slabs, you want to keep in mind that we are shooting for the end product of earrings. And so we want to, like for number one, we want like our various elements to be, you know, a size that looks good on an earring. For example, here's a pair of finished earrings, and you can see that little fern right there. And you can see the little doodads I'm adding now. So you don't want to make your pieces way too big. You want all your little decorative elements to really play into the whole design of earrings. Another thing I'm doing is I'm using tools. I'm poking holes in these little brown doodads that I just put down. I'm using my tool to add a detail and to also secure that piece in place. Anytime you use tools to help you position pieces on a background, then it gives you the double bonus of creating a detail and a solid situation where the pieces of clay are actually connecting. This is Alizarin Crimson in a little rod, and I'm using my blade to just cut some thin pieces. And then instead of picking those up and rolling them, I'm using the flat end of my needle tool, and I'm just picking them up like that. And I'm actually seating them in place with the tool. And this also conserves hand motions. So I actually did several years of production jewelry making. And so my husband would come in the studio and he would watch me work. This slab is ready to go. He would watch me work, and then he would always come up with these ways of making me do things faster and quicker. So I've had a lot of analysis done on my work. Okay, this is a geometric slab. So my background color it's half a bar of white and half a bar of gray granite. And that gives me this just beautiful little speckledy background that creates so much interest. I ran the half a bar of white and half a bar of gray granite through the pasta machine to the second thickest setting, and that's how thick this is. Now, every slab I'm making is the same thickness. That way, when I go to create my beautiful earring designs, this piece and this piece are the same thickness, and you always get a consistency. You could go thicker if you want, or you can go thinner. If you go thinner, you're going to get more and more shapes. If you go thicker, you'll get fewer shapes. but that's up to you. It just depends on how you want your pieces to look. Next, I rolled out a very thin sheet. This was on the number 4 setting of this Raw Sienna. Let me scoot over so you can see. And all I did was take a blade and cut this into triangles. Oops, I gotta cut squares first.
Amy, for people that don't have pasta machines, do you know like the estimated thickness?
Okay, so the thickest setting on a pasta machine, the number 1 setting or the thickest setting is 1/8 of an inch. The number 2 setting is, oh boy, I don't know. It's a little bit more than a 1/16. But yes, you can do this without a pasta machine. But my point is, if you want to go into business and you want to actually make some money, one of the ways to recoup the money that you're making for your time, because your time is the most valuable thing you have, is to use tools that really help you. And when I first started out in polymer clay, I resisted buying a pasta machine for a really, really long time. I don't know why I did that, but I did. And I finally I thought it lessened my art or something, but I finally gave in. And once I added the pasta machine to my repertoire, it cut my time back, and it made my pieces neater. And it also made me faster. It made my pieces neater, and it made it more consistent. Just like I said earlier, I just added some Spanish olive green dots there. Making your pieces more consistent, like keeping them all the same thickness, will really give your finished product a nice overall look. I think it even adds to the quality, not detract from it. Okay, next I'm going to add some little white balls to these Spanish olive things, kind of turning them into olives. Another thing I did on this particular slab, so that I didn't have to waste time making decisions and figuring out what to do next, was once I had I determined in my mind, okay, I'm going to make the Raw Sienna ones triangles. I'm going to make the Spanish olive ones circles. I'm going to add a white dot to each Spanish olive one. I had a system, and that kept me from making just random choices and helped me focus on filling the sheet randomly with these different pieces. Now, it looks random, but there is really a system to it. So next, what I did was I just took a bar of the beige. I didn't even condition it. I just used a blade to cut away really super thin sheets or pieces. And then I just added those to the top. And these are almost they're kind of a triangle shape. They're just very geometric and easy to apply. All these tips are going to be available for you in a PDF form and in step-by-step photos early next week once the video comes live. And you can actually read and follow along with my basic instructions. Actually, they're quite detailed instructions because I really wanted to give you all the information that you could need to succeed. And it's all there, probably more information than you'll ever want of me rambling on about how to do this and how to conserve your time. I've got the Alizarin Crimson going now, and I'm just using the flat end of this tool again to pick up these little lumps of clay and flatten them right down in place. So I'm using the tool to pick up the clay, and I'm using the tool to seat the clay. So that also is a time-saving mechanism. Next, I just added a little dot with this blunt tool, and that just adds another layer of detail. Now, to help this sheet kind of, tie into this one, because these are the same colorway and they're meant to go together, I repeated those Alizarin Crimson dots like I did there. And then on this sheet, I went back in and made some of these X's across the back, because that is also repetitive in that floral sheet, and it kind of helps tie them. So bringing one detail from one sheet to another sheet, that really helps all of this look like a coordinated effort. So now these 2 sheets are done. This is the geometric terrazzo sheet, and this one is the Pebble floral sheet. And I'm just going to set these aside. Now, because I have these sandwiched, I have both of these on deli. It's so easy to pick these up and move them out of my way. I can even stack them and conserve the space that I'm using, and they won't hurt each other. This deli sheet is fantastic because it doesn't leach the plasticizer out of the clay. It just helps you save things for later. and get things quickly out of your way.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
Is there a default thickness to start from for earrings?
Well, I would not start. One would be the default, the thickest setting, that's 1/8 of an inch. But to my thinking, that is a little too thick. It's not going to be very delicate. I would encourage you to go down to a 2 or a 3 if you're using a pasta machine. And really much beyond 3, you're going to have trouble actually handling the clay, and that might be discouraging. So I think 2 is a really, really good place to start. Okay, so now you can see I just put all my scraps of clay on a piece of this deli sheet so I can just quickly get it out of my way. All right, next we are going to look at making some accent types of clays that will be nice, nice pieces for gathering it all together. And what I mean by that is you don't always want every design that you have to be as busy as the ones we just made. So these are super busy. These give us like some coordinated color. They give us a pop of bling, but they also make a place for your eye to land between the busyness. And it really helps put these pieces together. Let's take this pair of earrings, for example. We have kind of a more busy piece in the middle, but then I have these just textured elements that help make it not so, not so crazy all the time. Let's look at this one again. This is a good example of real busy here, but then the green with the gold metallic, it just kind of gives it a nice landing focal point that ties it all together. So what I did here was, so far we made our backgrounds in the lighter colors. And so then what I did was I focused more on the darker colors in our colorway. And that would be the Alizarin Crimson, the Spanish Olive, and the Raw Sienna. And so what I did was I actually conditioned up all that I had left of those. And then I trimmed away some of the excess. I'll show you what I trimmed away. I sheeted both this one and this one together through the pasta machine on the second thickest setting again. And then I trimmed all of this away. So I still have this to work with for later for scraps, but I have a nice quantity of both gold leaf and textured. And then the same with the Raw Sienna. I have a nice quantity of gold leaf and textured. And let me set these aside so I can show you how I got that done. We're going to do the very thing that I just did for those with the Spanish Olive. And I want to show you how I did that. So first, I'm going to run these through the pasta machine to the second thickest setting. And I've got a machine right here. I'm sorry it can't all be on camera, but you're just going to have to trust me. So that was half of it. And I'm going to go again with this other half. And then I'm going to combine both of these into one big sheet. And I'm going through my pasta machine, and I want to take this down to the second thickest setting. And we'll go from there. Okay, now I have this really nice sheet that's easy to work with. Second thickest setting again. Okay, now I'm just going to take a long blade here and section this. I want to trim off my rough edges just so I can think clearly. Sometimes those rough edges kind of set you, kind of make it uneasy. So I'm just going to set those aside. And we can still use those later, and we will. Just cleaning this up a bit, okay? That's all I'm doing. So I'm going to set this aside on a piece of deli paper. And I would encourage you to keep your scraps as you work kind of color coordinated. Kind of keep all your scrap green together and all your scrap white together and all your scrap everything together. And that will help you to really stay organized and not go so crazy when there's so much to think about. Okay, now I've just cut my volume of clay in half. And the reason I did that is I want to make half of it gold leaf and I want to make half of it textured. These are some cool texture sheets from Michaels. There are 3 sheets in the pack, and each sheet has a front and back texture. So for this colorway system, I used this one for the green. I used this one for the Raw Sienna, and I used this one, which is kind of pebbly. It's maybe hard to see. It's sort of like an orange peel. I use the very simplest textures in this set. I kind of avoided these really big ones like this. Well, I love that. I think it's nice, but that's kind of like too big for earrings. So I went with the smaller ones. And these are so easy to use. What you do is just, I'm going to line this up on half, and I want to press down and really make that texture bite in. Don't be confused. This pebbly walkway texture is on the back. Once you can feel that it has bitten into the clay, you can roll over it with a roller. And this will help it really, really bite in. I like to make the deepest texture I possibly can. If you have trouble with your clay sticking to the texture sheet, you can always spritz with water. But because I have my clay sticking down to this silicone work mat, I really don't need that because this will just peel away nicely. Look at that beautiful, beautiful texture. And the texture sheet came out clean. Now, if you do spritz with water for a release, you're going to need to go back with a paper towel and get that water off there before proceeding, because water is not part of the polymer clay system. So if you use water, you just want to get rid of it. Okay, the other half of this, I'm going to use some gold leaf to really make a nice pop. And that, because I used all the elements I used in my earring system, they were all gold findings, like gold jump rings and gold ear wires. And so I also am using gold leaf to kind of accentuate all the gold I had going with my findings. So that's another choice that you're going to want to make, is maybe it would help you to just focus in. Okay, if I'm just getting started, maybe I'll just start with gold earrings and see what kind of feedback I get from my customers. Maybe I'll just start with silver. But that's a choice that you need to make, and it could be just totally based on your own preference. But I use the gold leaf to highlight my gold findings. Next, I'm just going to take some composite gold leaf, and this is readily available at craft stores, and I'll just position it down. Now, you always want to use composite gold leaf. It works best with polymer clay. Real and true 24 karat gold leaf does not work so well because it can tarnish and has to be sealed. But this composite gold leaf is just the cat's meow when it comes to adding pop elements to your clay. And then just tear away the excess. I could go ahead and get a little bit more up here just to maximize, you know, my space. And then I'm just gently pulling away the leaf and putting it back here in my little folio. The leaf sheets all come between pieces of paper to keep them, you know, separated from each other. And so I like to just keep this little folio of paper by my side. I just laid those in there as best as I could, and then I'll fold it up shut and save that for future projects. Don't sneeze while you're working with it. It's so light as a feather, you can just lose it. Okay, so you want to make sure your gold leaf is really burnished down well, and you can tell that it's all laying down super flat. Next, I want to get this up off my work surface, and I want to stretch the clay a bit. Now, what I did when I made these earrings, and you can tell, is that I ended up with gold leaf on both sides. And that's not a bad idea because, you know, earrings can dangle and spin when you're wearing them. And I'll show you how I did that. So first, I'm just going to make sure the gold leaf is really attached well by running this through on the second thickest setting through my pasta machine. And that hasn't changed it much. It's very smooth. I do have a couple big cracks. That's okay. To get it to really crackle, which is what I like, is this whole, and this is what I mean by crackle. See how it has that super cool faux crackle finish? I really love that. And so what you need to do is make your sheet thicker. And so I'm going to make my sheet thicker by folding it in half. And I'm going to run the fold side through the pasta machine first. That way the air will be pressed out. And I'm still in the second thickest setting, but look at that beautiful crackle. And that in itself is just a very lovely pattern to add to our colorway system. And it's on both sides. So I really love that. Now we have at our disposal, I've showed you how to make both the texture and the gold leaf. So I'm going to pick this green one up, this texture one, and I'm going to add it here to my sheet of texture and gold leaf items. and I'll just set those out of my way, which is so easy to do because I have them on this deli sheet. Another thing you can do is use heavy cardstock or cardboard or even folded printer paper and slide that underneath. And that gives you a whole nother way to just quickly get this out of your way. Especially if you don't have a really large work area, you might find it beneficial to have pieces that are just so able to get out of your way. Okay, next, this is probably my favorite part of the whole system, and that is taking what you already have created, which is a lot of scrap. We have a lot of scrap here. Can you zoom out just a bit, Jen? We got a lot of scraps here. This is what we have left over. And what I love to do with scraps is make these beautiful stripy sheets that are perfectly color coordinated. So I'm going to show you how I did that one. This is a scrappy sheet that I made with the excess. It was this extra background color from the floral. So it's this color here. And then also it's leftover Raw Sienna and it's leftover Alizarin Crimson. Just made that beautiful stripy pattern. And this is also a number 2 thickness so that it's all coordinated thickness wise. Okay, let's make another one. And I want to get some of my green going, and I'm going to use, this is my leftover clay. See how I basically have all my clays like color coordinated here in the scraps. This is that white and gray granite that was the background for this terrazzo. So I'm going to use the rest of it up. I'm just going to recondition it into a little rod. I'll just roll it out in my hands and make a little rod here. Actually, I'm going to cut this in half and make 2 kind of thick rods. Okay, and then with that, I'm going to use some of this Spanish olive that was left over from our sheets. And I'm just going to shape it into a rod as well. And we're just going to combine some of these scraps together to make the most beautiful and unique marbling. Okay, then I want to use a little bit of this gray granite. So I'm just going to recondition it and shape it in. And I'll just put it right in here. So let me turn this sideways. What I have is 2 of the whites, the green, and then the gray granite. And so all I have to do is start rolling and twisting this. So I'm rolling it smooth, and then I'll start twisting. Rolling and twisting, and then I'm going to fold this, and I'm going to fold it again, and this will really multiply my stripes. And it also makes the stripe sizes more random, because the last thing I want is an actual, I want this to be really organic in feel. I don't want it to be real, you know, solid geometric. So I am rolling and twisting and letting the stripes make their own, you know, random sizes. And all the while we have that beautiful gray granite speckle in there that's just floating around freely. And that makes a nice little pepper accent, which just gives that much more detail. I just love that. So if you just keep rolling and you just keep twisting, you're just going to get more and more and more stripes. So depending on how fine you want your stripes to look, you can just keep going. And the green is so much heavier in there because I used a big area of green. So, all right, now let's say we like the way this looks, but this shape isn't going to lend itself very well to all of our earring production. So what we want to do is just kind of flatten this into a thick pancake and then run it through our machine again on the second thickest setting. So I'm going to start with number 1, and that's what we have. And then I'm going to go down to the number 2. And isn't that pretty? Just a nice, it looks like it's only 2 colors. It's actually 3. And just a really nice accent piece that we can use in our production of earrings. Hey, Jen, will you give me a time check?
It's 3:32.
Okay. All right. Now I have one. No, we're going to save this one. So now I'm just going to put my scraps aside. for now. And I want to show you how to think about processing all of these clays into pieces that we can actually use for the earrings. So what I did, these were I would call these my most like focal type pieces. They definitely took the most work to make. They're kind of the most exciting element in the earrings. Here's another pair that I have incorporated a little button of the terrazzo and a big moon shape from the terrazzo. And then I have this marbled piece as an accent in the middle. So because these are the most labor intensive and they have the most detail and everything, I kind of made those the focal point of my earring pieces. And I used the others to tie it all together. So the cutters that we use to create all these earrings, I used this circle and square set from Michaels, and I also used this teardrop shape that's available at Michaels. And so what I did was I focused on cutting larger elements out of these two slabs. Now I did not use this one. This is the very biggest one. I think it's 2 inches tall. I decided to just set that one aside, but I did use large teardrops. I used large circles and I used large squares. And so basically I just kind of went at it and I just started cutting, and I cut things out with the most conservation of design. So what I mean by that is if I'm cutting out one that way, then I'm going to turn it and just absolutely try to get as much mileage as I possibly can out of this. Like that fits in there a lot better. Try to get as much mileage and as many pieces out of this slab as I possibly can. Now, another thing I forgot to mention when we were decorating our slabs is be very conscientious about finishing your edges with all those details. You can see right here, that's kind of a boring area and I'm avoiding it with my cutter. I can use it for an accent piece later, but I decided to kind of leave off there because I just really, it's just kind of naked. Another thing you want to do is with this big teardrop cutter or any of your large cutters is cut even quantities. I'll pull these out so you can see them. You can see what I cut. Because we're dealing in earrings and we're mostly catering to people who, need a pair of earrings. I'm cutting, even amounts of these large pieces out from each slab. And then I could go back in here with my square or with my circle cutter and just, keep cutting. So I'm going to cut right over here in tight with this square and I'll set that out. And I think I'll cut right here. I'm going to keep the idea of cutting, in even numbers. So the first thing I did was I cut my slabs up and I tried to make them, even, and I used the larger cutters. Now, here's one right here. Now I only really have one green fern left. So let me show you what I might do with that because I can only get one circle cut out with the one green fern. But what I might do when I go to incorporate this in an earring design is I could cut this right in half and then into 2 half circles. And then I have that beautiful green fern on both sides. So there's that idea too. Another way to really get more mileage out of your slab pieces. So, okay, let's cut some more out just so we can have more pieces to play with. I'm going to go in here with my circle cutter now and cut some of these. Because I want you to be able to get a feel for how to assemble all of this. And then if you're left 1, 2, 3, 4, those are even. If I can't get 2 more big ones, I'll just go ahead and step down to a smaller size cutter, which fits in here better, and try to, optimize my cuts by making smaller, using a smaller cutter to get more done. And those are nice too. But you kind of just have to give yourself the freedom and the space to work with what you have and not fret about it too much, and just trust that it's all gonna come together in the end and that it will all work out nicely. I'm even going down a size in these little teardrop cutters. So there's that. Okay. Now I have all this beautiful scrap left over and we're going to use that too. So don't worry about that. Let's move on to this terrazzo sheet and we'll do just exactly the same thing. We're just going to cut this baby up and get as many nice cuts out of it as we can in the bigger sizes because this is what holds all the details. And making an even number in each shape. And then we'll switch to a different shape.
Amy, do you ever sketch out your slab ideas?
Never, never, ever. I don't ever sketch. But that's me, guys. That's only me. I know a lot of artists who do sketch, but every time I sit down and try to sketch an idea, I think, oh, what the heck? I'm just going to make it in clay and see how it works. So I've been at this for over 30 years. I've been having this material in my hands and my brain just works in clay a lot better than it does other mediums. So that is just me. I think it's a good practice for people, especially people who are good at sketching. Now I do love to doodle, but I also like to doodle in clay. So, okay, we've got an interesting situation over here on the edge. We can either go down a cutter like this, which is a really good way to use some of this up on the edge. Let me see if I can get one more out here to follow my rule of twos. Okay, but another thing you can do on the edge is just cut right off the edge with maybe this square cutter. And then you can go back and trim that up. Or hey, I just had this idea. Wouldn't this be a cool shape? I didn't even make this on any of my samples. This is freewheeling at its best, people. What if you went in here with this and made this kind of funky U shape? So that would be cool too. Anything goes, okay? So just keep cutting until you've got this all cut up. Oh, I'm gonna need another one of those, aren't I? So I'll just go ahead and cut that, make a match for that. Just let it flow. Just go with the flow. It's the best way to go. There's another one of those. So we'll have a pair. If you get stuff stuck in here, just push it out with your tools. All right. I think I can cut. Let's cut it. Let's cut one more out of here just so we can be done with this one. Okay. So this is all good real estate right here. We're going to use this too. Okay. I want to show you one more technique for really maximizing your pieces here. Okay, a lot of the earrings I have designed, I've also made cutouts because these cutouts, as you can see in this one, I used a larger jump ring. That's one less hole to drill. And then this is the cutout of another style. So totally maximizing your style designs and your style options by using these smaller cutters to add more interest. And if you get, you know, about a fat eighth away from the edge, you can probably have a jump ring that's large enough to connect this piece to another one. So I'll just, from a couple of these squares, I'll just go ahead and cut out this little square because this gives you two more buttons. These are what I call buttons, those top pieces. You can glue, you could easily glue, you know, post earrings to the backs of these, but also gives you a nice design element out of the middle. And we can do the same thing with the circle cutters. If we take this little circle, you could either put it right in the middle or you could put it off center. And that just creates that much more information and interest that we have in like a set like this. So we can have that as a set. Okay. Now, along those same lines, oh, I should have been working this right on top of the, darn it. I wasn't working these on top of my plastic, which I should have been. So now they're in my way and it's going to take way too long to offload them. But we need to bring in some of these other styles of slabs that we made, like the gold leaf and also the texture sheet. Let's grab this green one. What I did with these was I really used these a lot as highlights. And as such, I kind of ended up making lots of buttons out of these and lots of background pieces. Like This is one of my favorite pairs. This has like a little circle dangle on top, but then the back is just this big button of texture. And so I kind of focused on making just a lot of accent pieces with the texture and with the gold leaf. And so I kind of focused, you know, maybe on some smaller cutters for these, but you don't have to. It's just kind of a fun way to use up these and to have lots of pieces that connect all the pieces together and, you know, kind of finish or complete the look. I could even do some bigger ones back here. And then I can cut out some little squares, you know, to use more of that. Here's another fun way to use your cutters. If we cut that out and we make just a basic square, but then we can turn this basic square into a triangle shape by cutting it in half. Okay, and then you have two elements like that. You can do the same thing with your larger circle. You can cut a circle out and then cut it in half, and you have two more elements that are useful, you know, for designing your patterns. Okay, Jen, what's my time?
We're at 3:43.
Okay, so next I want to show you how to organize this for actually getting something made. Okay, so what I did as I was going along, I cut up all my slabs into these various sizes and shapes. I still have so much over here that needs to be cut out. Okay, but I can't show you all of that. Oh, and we need to cut out a few of these. Let's do a few of these on camera. These are the marble pieces. So let's cut a few of these. Like so. And I'll just set these aside. Okay, what we have here, I'm just going to cut these in half just for more interest. And I'm going to cut these in half. I think the squares look best cut into triangles because the square has those rounded corners. So I like it better as triangles. All right, now, once you have everything cut out, you're going to have to take some time and really think about what you want these finished designs to look like. And so what I did was I actually created finished patterns of design right here on my baking sheet. Okay, so you might say, oh, I want to have a pair of earrings that has this as the dangle element and this as my button element at the top. And that could either be a wire earring or it could be a post earring, could be glued to that. Okay, so what I did was I laid out my designs right on the baking sheet. Now you could, if your brain works a different way, you could bake all your cutout elements and then decide how you want to mix and match them. Or some people are going to want to do that ahead of time so that they know that they have enough, you know, pieces and parts to make so many pairs of earrings. So let's say this would be 2 pairs of earrings. Another thing that you need to consider is if you're going to, you're going to need holes in all of these for your jump rings and for connecting elements. So there's a hole right there in that little button. You're going to need to decide, am I going to poke the holes before I bake or am I going to poke the holes after? And so if you want to poke them first, I wouldn't use a needle tool. I would use this blunt point tool because you really need to make sort of a nice size hole. And I just push that right in and then wiggle it around to kind of make it bigger, like so. And you're going to need a hole every single place that you're going to put a jump ring to connect them. Now, a good rule of thumb is that you need that hole to be a little bit thicker than your jump ring. So say, for example, you have this size jump ring, which is right there between my fingers. Whatever you're making your hole with needs to be bigger than that, because as jump rings are worn, they're going to slide back and forth through that decorative element. And then you don't want them to get hung up and bound. You want them to be able to float freely. That's where this style is going to come in so handy because it's such a huge hole and you can just really put a large jump ring through there. And you could maybe connect it to one of these on the top. So That would be a cute earring design. I'm going to put that on my pan. But that's for you to decide. If you're going to poke the holes ahead of time, I would use sort of a larger blunt point tool like that. Or some of you might have access to my favorite hole poking tool is a Dremel tool. And I've been using this exact same tool. I stole it from my husband about 30 years ago out of his workshop. I've been using it ever since. These have a lot of different bit sizes that you can use, and they're easy to take the bit out and change it out for a thinner bit or a thicker bit. That's the only thing I've had to replace through the years is worn down bits. And they're super easy. It's a very safe tool too. In all the years, I've never hurt myself or caused any damage to any person. I've ruined beads and I've ruined different clay pieces, but Dremel tools are a really great way to mass produce holes in lots of pieces. Okay, I have one more thing that I promised, because tell me one more time what time it is.
3:40.
Okay, I got a couple things I want to show you. And that is what to do with all of this, because I promised you I would. So to me, this is still really good stuff right here. And I just need to find another worksheet, which I'm going to steal this one from my baking pan. I line my baking pans with these silicone sheets from Sculpey, and it just keeps the pieces from getting a bright, shiny spot from the metal pan. And I just have silicone baking sheets that line my metal baking pans. They just live on there all the time. So what I have here is all this beautiful scrap, and I'm just peeling it off of my deli sheet so that I can work with it. Okay, and if I want to, I can incorporate some of this stuff with the gold leaf in it, or I have these weird shaped pieces that I cut away from the gold leaf or from the texture. I can just keep adding in, you know, this would be good. If you have leftover scraps from your marbled sheets like this, you can throw that in there too. Okay, it's all fair game because this is going to be so nice looking when I'm done. Okay, here's what we do. We pile all this up, and these instructions are also in the PDF I was telling you about on Sculpey.com, which will be up and running. The instructions for this will be up sometime next week. And so you just wad this up, and we're going to do the exact same thing with it that we did with those marbled pieces before. And I don't see much of this color, so I'm just going to add it, because this Alizarin Crimson is such a nice, nice accent color. So I'm just adding that over the top. And here's where I said I only made 42 pairs of earrings, and I could have just kept going and going, because every time I processed my scrap into something to use, I just kept coming up with more scrap. So I'm just rolling this into a log and then twisting. And this will really produce some super beautiful scrap, especially with those little bits of gold leaf that are running through there that I incorporated from the leftover leaf. Pushing from each end will also help to really shrink your stripes into very thin stripes, and that looks good. Okay, so once you have, like, this looks really nice and you like the way it looks, what I'm going to do is flatten this down before I run it through my pasta machine. So you want to have good hygiene with your pasta machine, never running anything through it that, you know, is going to damage the gears. I always patty it out a little bit thinner before I run it through. Okay, so I've got that pretty workable, and I'm going to put it through on the first thickest setting. Look how beautiful that is. And then I'm going to go down to number 2, because I'm following my rule of always, always, always having it on the second thickest setting. Now you have all of this that's fair game to cut out more shapes and to combine with all your other elements and to make more and more and more earrings. Okay, I've got one more organizational tip that I cannot forget. I showed this to you in the front facing, but maybe you couldn't really enjoy the massive quantity of earrings that are here. This is 36 pairs of earrings, so it's not all of them that I made. And what I did, these are egg crates, and I had to find a way, just particularly for this video, I wanted you to have access to something that you can have in your home to organize these. because once they come off the baking pan, you still want to keep them in pairs, either for gluing the posts on or for adding the jump rings or for drilling the holes. However you choose to finish it, you still have to have a way to get the baked items into a organizational system that will keep everything together. And so I used these egg cartons, and each of these wells indicates one pair of earrings. And so as I drilled all the holes in these, I just had my egg cartons right beside my Dremel tool. I drilled the holes through, and then I just put them all back in that little well. And I just kept going from well to well until all the holes were drilled. And then I just started, I sat down, I put on a nice TV show and just started finishing earrings with jump rings and with glue on backs, and making them into, you know, something that you could actually wear and actually sell. So what's so cool about this whole system is that you have a color coordinated effort, which is going to make any craft show display look fantastic. It's going to make your Etsy shop look fantastic. But yet, even though we have so many pairs, no two are exactly alike. Every single one is a little bit different, either in the way it's constructed or the way it's finished or the way it's grouped from you know, shape to shape. Okay, so then we'll take, if we have a moment, we'll just take a moment and talk about assembly.
What about sanding, Amy?
You know what? I tried really hard to make sure that all my pieces were finished to the best of my ability. Like if I have raw pieces like this, a lot of times if I have rough edges, I will finger buff those before they go in the oven. I do everything I can to make my pieces as smooth and beautiful as possible before they're baked, so that I have minimal sanding. Also, some of these elements, like this one, this has the raised leaves and the raised little baubles, so you don't want to sand that flat. Some of the beauty of this is the texture that's incorporated in the design, like the texture sheets we used. So we don't want to sand flat. You might sand edges for quality, but I try to make sure all that's done ahead of time. And then what you're going to need is, to finish these, what you're going to need is a collection of various sizes of jump rings. And a few of the earring styles you can see, I actually added like a metallic element to just make it even more blingy. So that's up to you. Those things are readily available. This is kind of a complex earring that I put together with a metal oval. I've got a little, I have a little like half moon of the slab there. And then I have a couple elements in the dark alizarin crimson. And I'll just show you how I did that. So for the button at the top, I added the ear wire right to the button at the top. That is done. I made sure that the hole was close enough to the edge of the clay that the ear wire would go right in. And then what I did was I have a larger jump ring here. And let's make sure everyone knows, when you open jump rings, you want to put that, the crack of the jump ring right at the top facing you. Generally, I would like to have 2 pairs of pliers, but if you could see the mess I've got going here, you'd know why I can't find my other pair. So I'll just use my fingers. And when you open jump rings, you move one side of the jump ring away from you and you move one side of the jump ring toward you. So you're twisting it open like that. You don't ever stretch jump rings. That is incorrect, because jump rings have a little bit of a tension to them, and it's that tension that helps them stay closed. So what I did here is I just put this through one of the holes, and then I fixed it to one of these rings like so, and then closed the jump ring by untwisting just the way I twisted it open. So there's that dangle element of the earring. And then what I did was just used a smaller jump ring to go up here in the top and attach it to this button. You just attach both pieces through the jump ring, and you want to use a jump ring that, you know, looks nice, and that the size of the jump ring coordinates and accents your actual finished piece. So that one was a little more complex. We've got the wire at the top, 2 jump rings here in the middle, and then another jump ring at the dangle. So Jen, what kind of questions do we have that need to be addressed?
Do you need to glaze the gold leaf pieces?
No, you do not. You don't have to, because It's composite gold leaf, and I've never had that. I've never had composite gold leaf. She's talking about these pieces. I've never had the tarnish. If you tried to use real 24 karat or even a different blend, then you would need to seal those, and you could seal those with Sculpey gloss glaze. If you like a shiny look, you could seal any of these with our Sculpey gloss glaze. Our glossy glaze comes in glossy, and it also comes in matte. So that just goes on with a paintbrush once everything is completely cool. You could totally do that, but it's, you know, completely not necessary. Any more questions?
A lot about fingerprints. How do you handle fingerprints?
Oh boy. I really don't. I think you'd be hard pressed to find my fingerprints among all of the detail that's going on here. Of course, on the texture ones, there's no fingerprints because my fingers didn't, you know, come into contact. I do try really hard to hold things by the edge. The gold leaf ones don't have fingerprints either. And I figure if you get a piece of my art that's got my fingerprint on it, then that's as good as a signature. So I'm not really concerned with fingerprints.
What about finishing the backs of your earrings?
So a lot of these, you know, like the gold leaf pieces, oh, that one doesn't. But some of the gold leaf ones, because we folded the gold leaf in half, it's going to have, where is that? Our green one. We folded that in half, and so it's going to have this beautiful gold leaf front and back. Our marbled pieces, that is front and back, so that's a done deal. It's really just the, you know, the slab pieces that I think just as long as it's clear of dirt and debris, it's going to look fine. There's really no need to finish every single piece. You could paint them on the back if you wanted to add an accent color. That's really up to you, but all the ones that I have done here, none of them actually have, I haven't gone to any trouble to finish the backs. This is that beautiful colorway that I did at the last, where I showed you how to take all of your scraps and make just this delicious layer upon layer of marbling, and that is also pretty on both sides. So that one's a done deal too.
We're at time.
Okay, so I hope that you've learned something. Let's go front facing, Jimena. So I hope you've learned something. I've had a blast just concocting this class. I do have quite a background in making production jewelry. Long before I worked for Sculpey, I made production jewelry. So does that mean something, Jen? No. I got a little tone there. Okay. And so it was fun to rope all those skills back in and present this class. We've got another class coming up in February. It's our first ever premium class that we're doing with Michael. So it's going to be February 22nd. It's going to be a 90-minute extended course. And I'm actually going to show you today. I've glossed over how to make slabs, but in that 90-minute course on February 22nd, I'm going to show you how to make the slab from start to finish. We're going to get our Zen on, we're going to get real quiet and calm, and we're going to make a slab from start to finish together in 90 minutes. And then we're going to have some highlights of what you can do with it. But the focus is going to be on doing the clay work together. So I hope that if you found this intriguing, you might join me on the 22nd for that class. Okay, please remember, if you make things and post to social media, we would love for you to use the Sculpey hashtag Sculpey, hashtag made it with Sculpey, hashtag how do you Sculpey, hashtag
she's put all the hashtags in the chat.
Oh cool, the hashtags are in the chat. Please let us know with the hashtags when you post to social media so that we can see your work and you can see ours. So look for the video and the PDF next week, and thanks so much for joining. Take care.